Unexpectedly detained for fun, racist cop discovers his arrested victim is the captain's wife. Officer Dan Murphy cruised the backroads of Breezy Hollow, Texas, proud as a peacock. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows that danced over the cracked pavement. He spotted a figure in the dim light. It was Sara, a community volunteer who stood out in her vibrant, flowing dress that defied the dull standards of small-town fashion. Dan's mind raced. A woman like her didn't belong on these streets. Without a second thought, he hit the brakes and jumped out, swelling his chest as he swaggered towards her. "Evening, ma'am," he said, a teasing glint in his eye. "What brings you out here at this hour?" Sara looked confused, her warm brown eyes widening with concern. "I'm just heading home from the community center. We had a mentor meeting tonight." But Dan barely heard her. Fueled by a rush of authority, he decided it was time to teach her a lesson. "Sounds suspicious to me. License and registration." He crossed his arms, chest high, as if scattering the gravel beneath his boots would intimidate her. "Why are you treating me this way? I'm not doing anything wrong." Sara's voice trembled, but it was laced with defiance. "Just following procedure, ma'am. Don't make me ask again." Every word dripped with judgment, every moment heavy with tension. Little did Dan know, Sara wasn't just another face on the streets. She was the wife of Captain Johnson, the beloved sheriff who dedicated his life to protecting their town. As chaos unfolded so quickly, it felt like a thunderstorm gathering in the distance. As the evening wore on and Sara didn't arrive home, worried murmurs spread through the community. Friends called friends, all asking the same question: where is Sara? Her kids, who adored her tender-hearted nature, began to worry. Captain Johnson searched every corner of Breezy Hollow, a taut string growing tighter with panic. She was just at the mentor meeting, but now his heart raced, a knot twisting in his gut. The news of Sara's arrest spread like wildflowers in spring. A ripple of shock surged through town, igniting whispered conversations about the pride Dan flaunted. Voices rose, no longer just whispers, but cries for justice. This was at a tipping point for Breezy Hollow. At the town hall meeting that followed, the air crackled with tension. Faces filled with anger, confusion, and an unexpected kinship. "We've tolerated this for too long." A voice shouted from the crowd, echoing the pain they had long hidden beneath Southern hospitality and smiles. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sara's struggle echoed through every corner of the town, revealing cracks in their perfect little world. As memories of her kind acts surfaced in community conversations, a new spirit of unity began to bloom. The fight against ignorance had never felt so urgent. As they prepared to confront Officer Murphy, a silence washed over the room. Would he listen? Could he learn? The air infused with hope, resentment, and a need for change. Officers had a duty to protect, but could they overcome the prejudices that dug deep into their hearts? Somewhere between right and wrong, Officer Murphy stood at a crossroads. His shoulders ached with the weight of his choices. What happened next would shape not just his fate, but the town's destiny. Would he rise up to challenge his own beliefs or remain caught in the storm of his biases? The tension built, trembling at the crossroads of understanding and denial, leaving everyone breathless for what lay ahead. The town hall erupted into a wave of voices, each one more desperate than the last. Captain Johnson stood at the front, his jaw clenched and fists tight beside him. He felt the warmth of the anger radiating from the crowd. "Everyone, please!" he yelled, struggling to be heard above the chaos. "We need to stay calm and focused." But calm was hard to come by. This wasn't just another small-town incident, it struck deep at the core of their community values. Friends of Sara surged forward, their faces hardened with frustration and pain. "We can't let this slide, Sheriff. Not this time. Officer Murphy must be held accountable." Another voice shouted, resonating through the room. Captain Johnson took a deep breath. His heart raced with every pulse and something inside him shifted. He understood the stakes. If he didn't confront this, the trust his family and friends had in his leadership would be shattered. He turned to the small makeshift stage, seeking a chance to address the officer directly, to bring this matter to light. Moments later, Officer Murphy stepped through the doors of the hall, his posture rigid, shoulders squared. The instant eyes locked onto him, the air thickened. He felt every gaze as a piercing spotlight illuminating his flaws, his biases laid bare. It was the moment he dreaded but also needed, the clashing worlds of protection and prejudice intersecting in a single room. "Dan," the captain called out, his voice steady but strained. "We need to talk." The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the shuffle of feet and the creaking of old wood beneath the inspector's boots. All eyes remained locked on Murphy, and for the first time, doubt flickered behind his bravado. He had expected to swagger in, holding the town in his palm. Yet, facing the captain and the fiery community, he felt small. "Do you understand the damage you've done?" Johnson asked, taking a step forward. "This isn't just about Sara. This is about everything you represent. The trust, the safety, the very idea of justice in Breezy Hollow. You crossed a line." His heart pounded in his chest, the thudding echo of urgency. Officer Murphy shifted uncomfortably, those familiar thoughts for justifying his actions swirling in his mind. But beneath it all, a whisper of truth began to thread through his defenses. The fear of losing everything, his role, his reputation, began to pale against the ugly reality of his recent decisions. "I was just trying to do my job," he replied, his voice wavering slightly. A rumble of disbelief flowed through the crowd, and a voice cut through, sharp and clear. "Your job? Or your personal vendetta?" It was Linda, the head of the community center, a tireless advocate for justice. "You used your badge to intimidate, not to protect." Dan froze, the weight of his choices crashing down around him. Each memory of the evening flooded back Sara's confusion, her fear welling up like an emotional tide he couldn't ignore any longer. Captain Johnson sensed the shift. The crowd leaned in, a heartbeat of hope blossoming among them. This was their chance. "Do better, Dan. For her. For all of us," the sheriff urged, desperation lacing his plea. "Change can't happen without accountability." As the room held its breath, a choice loomed before Murphy. Would he confront the reality of his own actions and accept his part in the town's pain? Or would he double down, clinging to the false illusion of superiority? Tears prickled at the corners of Sara's friends' eyes as they waited, the earlier anger tempered now with a strange mixture of hope and fear. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he dig his heels in, perpetuating the cycle of pain? In that moment, America's heart echoed in Breezy Hollow. Would the walls of ignorance crack, or would they simply fortify against the truth? The collective pulse of the community waited for just one answer. Would Dan Murphy step into the light, or would he fade in the shadows of his own making? The silence felt like it had a weight of its own, hanging thick in the air as every eye in the town hall fixed on Officer Murphy. He stood there, the embodiment of tension, his heart racing in rhythm with that of the crowd. The murmurs faded, replaced by the deafening sound of his own breath, echoing in his mind. Captain Johnson watched him closely, searching for any hint of understanding in Dan's eyes. There was a flicker of recognition, a small crack in the protective armor Murphy had worn for years. Johnson took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Dan, people look up to you. They need to feel safe with you, not afraid." Murphy swallowed hard. He could almost hear Sara's voice in his head. The pleading in her eyes from that night had shifted from defiance to utter confusion. He had failed her. Hadn't he sworn to protect those in his community, not hinder them? One of Sarah's friends spoke up, her voice trembling. You can change this, Dan. You can be better. It was a plea, but in it lay a challenge. The crowd murmured in agreement, a swell of voices converging charging him, demanding that he reconcile his past with the man he could choose to be. He felt the heat of their stares, the collective shame pressing down on him like a weight he could no longer lean away from. If he was to truly do his job, he needed to take responsibility. But the fear of public failure gripped him. What would they think of him? Would he lose everything he had worked for? Johnson leaned in closer. You're not just a badge, Dan. You're a person. Own it. The captain's words clanged in Murphy's head like a bell ringing that demanded action. A long moment passed, and in that stretch of silence, something shifted. He opened his mouth, struggling against the knot in his throat. I messed up, he finally managed, his voice shaky but sincere. His admission was barely above a whisper, yet it rang louder than any shout in the room. The crowd leaned in, breath held as a mixture of surprise and cautious hope washed over them. I let my biases cloud my judgment. I didn't see Sara for who she is, a member of this community deserving of respect. The weight of those words clawed at him, a bitter truth he had been avoiding. His hands trembled at his sides, the veneer of authority peeling away to reveal the shame within. When he looked out at the crowd, there was disbelief etched on their faces, but there was also a flicker of something brighter, an ember of possibility. Could they forgive him? Could he forgive himself? Change requires more than words. Linda called out, her voice cutting through the tension. We need actions. Murphy nodded, a newfound determination igniting within him. You're right, he said, gaining momentum. I'll do better. I need to actively seek the truth, to learn. I will reach out to Sara, and his voice faltered momentarily. Could he fix this? Did any of it still matter? I'll take steps to make this right. The crowd held their breath, waiting to see if this was a moment of hollow promises or a determination for real change. Suddenly, a voice piped up from the back of the hall. What if it's not just about making it right? What if we need to make the system itself better? A young man, who had been quiet until now, stood up to elaborate. We could start a community forum. Let us strip away the fear and have open conversations about race and justice. The idea sparked a ripple of murmurs through the audience. Could this actually be the start of something new? Hope swelled in the air, taking root among them. They had gathered to demand accountability, but now they could also create a path forward. As the crowd began to buzz with renewed energy, Captain Johnson felt a knot of relief loosening in his chest. This was their moment. This was Breezy Hollow stepping into a future where misunderstandings could be confronted, where voices could be heard. But for Officer Murphy, the journey to redemption had just begun. He had just taken a step towards the light, and yet shadows lingered, waiting to see if he would truly embrace this chance or fall back into the darkness. Of complacency, could he follow through on this promise? Would the community rally around him to forge a bond strong enough to mend the fractures his actions had created? The echoes of their expectations settled within him. It was now or never. As the crowd buzzed with possibility, a sudden voice rang out from the side, cutting through the renewed hope like a thunderclap. And if he fails us again, what then? The skepticism lingered, a single drop of doubt amid the rising tide of unity. Would Officer Murphy rise to meet the challenge, or would he disappear, lost once more in the shadows of his past? The buzz of anticipation that had filled the town hall was abruptly shattered by a chilling realization. The young man's question hung heavily in the air like smoke after a fire, filling the room with a dread that belied the earlier spark of hope. A ripple of uncertainty swept through the audience, their faces morphing from expectation to concern. Officer Murphy's heart raced even faster. I won't fail you, he murmured, almost to himself, though the conviction behind his words felt shaky as an unsteady bridge. Yet, deep down, he understood that actions spoke louder than vows. Captain Johnson took a step forward, his expression shifting from supportive to fiercely resolute. We need to allow for this conversation, for this growth. But Dan's journey doesn't just belong to him, it belongs to all of us. He turned to the crowd, inviting them to share their experiences, to engage in the healing process. Every voice matters. Murphy could feel the tension in the room like static before a storm. It was his moment to forge a connection, to begin making amends. I want to hear from you all. I want to understand what you went through, he said, looking directly at the young man. It was an honest attempt, but even as the words left his lips, self-doubt gnawed at him. What did he truly know of their struggles? How could he represent their voices when he had disregarded them before? Linda, the same woman who had pushed him earlier, stood up again. We've all felt the impact of fear, Dan. It's different when you're on the front lines and when you're just trying to live your life. Agreeing murmurs rippled through the crowd. He could see the hurt etched into the faces surrounding him. A couple of older men exchanged wary glances, clearly resisting the idea that a moment in the spotlight could lead to something meaningful. The atmosphere turned charged with anxiety, and he had to grapple with the truth that each skeptical gaze was a reminder of his past actions, a past that still cast a long shadow over his present. I hope you can understand, he said, voice trembling with sincerity. I want to find a way to belong, to make Breezy Hollow a place where everyone feels safe, where you can trust me. But trust is built over time, officer, the young man countered, his eyes narrowing. Words are cheap, so how are we supposed to know you're not just apologizing to save your own skin? Dan straightened up, sensing the weight of every word in the room. You're right. I can't ask for trust without showing you I deserve it. It was a bold statement, a vow of sorts, but the fragility around the moment was palpable. He caught sight of Captain Johnson, who nodded in approval. That small acknowledgement felt like a lifeline, an affirmation that perhaps, just perhaps, he could navigate these choppy waters. Let us start that community forum, Murphy offered, pushing through the wave of self-doubt. We can partner. You pick the topic, let us share, listen, and learn. I'll be there, not just as a police officer, but as someone who wants to grow. Suddenly, a voice broke through once more. And what if we don't trust you to lead this? It was an older woman, her eyes ablaze with conviction. What if the system itself is the problem? The room fell into a hush again, all eyes trained back on Murphy. Doubt mixed with fire, and in that moment, he realized that this wasn't just about him. This was a reckoning for the entire community, a chance for change, a risk he must take, a truth everyone had to face together. Then let us break it down together, he declared, unsure but determined. Let us root out those problems. The idea of it sent a shiver through him. He was stepping directly into the heart of challenges he had long tried to avoid. And yet was this what shaking off the past really looked like? The crowd reacted with whispers, some nodding while others wore hesitant looks. Was this the start of a true transformation, or just another fleeting moment of hope? As the atmosphere shifted from doubt to curiosity, a reality settled upon Murphy. Would they truly stand with him if he stumbled? He could feel their collective gaze piercing through the air, demanding he move forward, not just stand tall. The uncertainty loomed large around him, but he couldn't turn back now. He had committed himself, and somewhere deep inside, hope flickered like the very ember they had ignited together, and as conversations began to spark among the crowd, one thought clutched at Murphy's chest. What if this wasn't only the beginning of accountability for him but could ignite a movement that could tear down walls between them all? The room buzzed with fresh energy, but fear still lingered. Deep down, everyone wondered, was this really the dawn of a new beginning or merely the quiet before a great storm? The murmurs grew louder, becoming a steady rhythm in the air as more people stood up, compelled to share their stories. Murphy watched them, each face carrying a history, a struggle, a story that needed to be voiced. The young man, Dan, remained quiet but resolute, his gaze fixed on Murphy, almost daring him to prove his intentions. All right, I have something to say, a man in the back called out, his voice thick with emotion. I've lived in Breezy Hollow for over 40 years. My family worked this land, we built this community from the ground up, and I have seen changes, good and bad. But I've also felt the sting of distrust from the police, time and again. I've seen friends wrongfully charged just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So tell me, why should I believe anything will change? Murphy's stomach twisted as he absorbed the weight of the man's words. It felt like an avalanche of years' worth of pain crashing down on him. He knew he had to respond, but the fear of failing again clawed at his throat. Because I'm ready to listen. Not just to you, but to everyone. This isn't just about my redemption, he said, voice shaking slightly, it's about all of us finding a new path forward. Together. The man shot him a skeptical glance. But how? You've only ever worn the badge, you don't know how it feels to be us. Then teach me, Murphy said, the desperate honesty of his plea resonating through the room. I want to learn. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but if you could give me a chance, I promise to do everything I can not to let you down again. Yet, doubt hovered like a dark cloud, and the laughter of a child outside the building cut through the tension as an unsettling reminder of innocence lost. Linda chimed in again, her voice warm yet firm. We've all made mistakes, officer. What counts is what you do now and how you make things right. Dan shifted slightly, the weight of decision settled on him. Okay, let us say we believe you. What does that actually look like? How do we rebuild trust when the system itself is designed to keep us apart? The room fell silent, each person wrestling with that question. Murphy could feel their eyes searching for an answer beyond words, a real, actionable commitment. I don't have all the answers, he acknowledged, his heart racing. But I see this as an opportunity. A chance to create new systems, to work side by side to fix what's broken. It was a bold statement, and a flicker of hope ignited among the crowd. Conversations began to bounce around like excited fireworks. Folks leaned closer, sharing their fears, ideas, and hopes. Murphy stood right there, a witness to a budding alliance, a tentative bridge being built between him and the community that had once viewed him as a barrier. Then, someone raised a voice gently, let us start small. What if we held monthly gatherings? Open discussions where we can voice our concerns and brainstorm solutions? Like a community think tank? Another added, excitement threading through their ideas. Yes. Exactly that. The first voice came back, a hint of enthusiasm sparking in the air. Murphy felt a swell of emotion. Could this simple idea be the key to unlocking deeper truths? As discussions spiraled into plans, joy mixed with the anxiety of uncertainty. Could they really dismantle the walls of distrust that had stood for so long? As the crowd started to break into smaller groups, brainstorming and sharing, Murphy caught Dan's eye. There was something profound in that look, an acknowledgement that they were stepping into uncharted territory together, but amidst the burgeoning energy, an uneasy thought snaked through Murphy. Was he truly equipped for this? The fear of dragging them all down weighed heavily, and he couldn't shake the doubt gnawing at his insides. Just as hope took flight, trepidation threatened to ground it. Before he could dive deeper into his thoughts, Dan spoke up again, pulling everyone's attention fast. I don't want this to be just another talk, another plan that fizzles out. We need dedication. He paused, searching the faces around him. And how do we hold Officer Murphy accountable? All eyes turned to him, the laughter and chatter fading. Murphy took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the moment. This was the point of no return. Let us create a committee, he proposed, a hint of excitement creeping in despite his anxiety. I'll be part of it, and together we can hold discussions, vote on initiatives, and make sure we're following through. If I ever slip, you have the power to call me out. Fair? A ripple of uncertainty washed over the crowd again, but the young man who had questioned him first nodded slowly. Fair. And just like that, a new chapter was waiting to be written, one that would need trust, courage, and perhaps a bit of grace as well. Would Breezy Hollow embrace this new possibility, or were they still too wounded to take that leap? as conversations picked up once more, an echo of hope stirred in the air. Yet, Murphy couldn't shake the feeling that the true test was yet to come, a belief that this fragile new beginning could soon face its biggest challenge. Murphy felt the buzz of excitement fill the room, but there was still a pit in his stomach. The idea of a committee was just a beginning. Now, he had to put words into action. As people mingled, voices chimed with enthusiasm, but he also saw the shadows of doubt flickering on faces. Was it truly enough? He could hear snippets of conversations around him. The energy was infectious. "I think it's a great idea," a woman said, her voice edged with cautious optimism. "But we need to make sure everyone, including those afraid of retribution, can speak freely." Another chimed in, "Yes. Safety in numbers, right?" Murphy nodded along, feeling more hopeful with each passing moment, yet he sensed a deeper challenge lurking beneath the surface. Could this moment shift the tide in Breezy Hollow? Dan approached him after a while, his expression serious. "I appreciate you putting yourself out there, Murphy. But it's not just about monthly meetings. Actions speak louder than words. If you can't follow through, you'll lose this crowd fast." "I hear you," Murphy replied, holding Dan's gaze. "This is a commitment I'm ready to make, but I'll need your support, too." Dan nodded, eyes softening slightly. "Then let us make plans. Let us get a list of everyone who wants in on this. We need variety, different voices, different experiences." Murphy felt the change in tone. This wasn't just a discussion anymore, it was unfolding as something real. He glanced around at the faces that had gathered. Some were old friends, while others were merely familiar strangers standing together at last. They spent the next hour brainstorming, jotting down names on a big whiteboard, each scribble a promise of participation. As the night wore on, laughter punctuated the air, interwoven with serious words of concern. Ideas bounced like rubber balls. An art show. A documentary series. An internship program linking high school students with local police. But then, like a flash of lightning, a voice cut through the room. It was Linda again, her brow furrowed. "What if this all leads to nothing? What if by trying to break down these walls, we end up building new barriers instead?" The murmurs amidst the crowd paused, the question hanging heavy. Murphy's heart raced, he understood where she was coming from. It could easily happen, Linda. But these conversations, starting here and now, are our first step. And we can learn, adjust. If we slip up, we acknowledge it. We keep going. "Yeah, but how?" Dan challenged again. "What happens when someone feels let down? When trust breaks?" He could see the apprehension settle over the crowd again. Their expectations weighed tangible. Murphy ran a hand through his hair. "When that happens, we regroup. We listen. Each voice matters. This isn't just a committee, it's a commitment to change." By the end of their meeting, they had a plan, a spark of direction. Yet, Murphy felt the gravity of what had been built and the responsibility resting on his shoulders. As they were wrapping up, a small boy outside peeked through the window, eyes shining with curiosity. Murphy's heart softened. Children were not supposed to worry about the world's weight. Just then, Dan clapped his hands, drawing everyone's attention once more. "I think we should celebrate this. A cookout or community gathering to kick off our new committee. Hear everybody out in a fun way." Cheers rippled through the crowd, encouragement building. But even as voices lifted, as hope sparkled in the air, Murphy's mind spiraled. They were moving into uncharted waters. Was he really made for this? Linda caught his eye again, and her expression held something he hadn't seen before: belief, maybe even faith. "We'll figure it out together," she said gently, as though sensing his fear. "Together," he echoed softly, the word carrying weight. Yet even as they laughed and planned, Murphy's heart thudded against his ribs. He knew the shadows wouldn't disappear overnight. Each laugh, each plan was layered with haunting memories of the past. As his gaze drifted to the window, he saw the boy still watching them. A thought nagged at him: was this the innocence they were fighting for? This moment felt precarious and precious, riding a thin line between hope and the fear of failure. What will it take to truly change things here? He pondered to himself. The echo of laughter filled the air, but he couldn't shake that feeling that a hidden storm was brewing just on the horizon. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across Breezy Hollow as excitement morphed into action. Murphy felt a swelling sense of determination. This community gathering might be their first shot at real change, an opportunity for voices to unite under one cause. Yet, inside, his fears wrestled with ambition. As he and Dan cleaned up the room, folding chairs and clearing tables, the conversations from earlier echoed in Murphy's mind. "We need variety," Dan had said. It was more than just a mantra now, it was a necessity. If they were going to break barriers, they needed perspectives spanning ages, backgrounds, and experiences. After they finished tidying, Murphy spotted Linda by the door, nervously gnawing on her lower lip. He approached her, a small smile breaking through his anxiety. "You okay?" "I'm just worried, I guess," she admitted. "About what happens next? About who will actually show up? What if it's just the same old faces that we always see?" Murphy placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're going to get the word out. Flyers, social media, door-to-door visits. We'll bring everyone in, trust me." Her eyes met his, searching for conviction. "You really believe this can work?" "I have to believe it. We have to believe it." His voice grew steadier. "Look, it's not just about having a cookout and calling it a win. It's about dialogue, real, raw conversations. I know change isn't quick, but we've got to start somewhere." Linda nodded but still looked unconvinced. Murphy could sense her trepidation. It was a feeling that clung to many, a blend of hope and skepticism. As he turned back to finish organizing, a commotion erupted outside. He rushed to the window and saw a group of kids. The small boy from earlier was there, but now he was joined by a few more friends, their laughter ringing like bells on a sunny day. They were kicking up dirt, their innocence in stark contrast to the weight of the world they were about to inherit. "Maybe that's what we need to do," Murphy murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "Reignite that spirit of childhood without the shadows of fear. They shouldn't carry all this." Dan overheard him and leaned against the wall. "You hit the nail on the head. We need to create spaces where they can be free to play, to dream. But we also need to pave the way for them. We've got to tackle the deep stuff, the hard truths." Murphy paused, considering that. He knew that the ugliness of the past couldn't be ignored. They needed to confront it, face it head-on. What if we organized some events for the kids? Art activities, games, mix-in discussions for parents? Get them talking. Dan grinned. "Now you're cooking. It's all interconnected." Just as the lightness of their conversation began to ease the anxiety in Murphy's chest, the mood shifted abruptly. A sheriff's car flew past, red and blue lights flashing, sirens wailing, a stark reminder that not everyone shared the vision of unity. "Are they always like this?" Linda asked, her brow furrowed as she watched the commotion outside. "Way too often," Murphy replied, clenching his jaw. The police had been a constant topic of concern in the community, a symbol of division rather than safety. They could hear the muffled shouts growing louder. Murphy stepped outside with Dan and Linda, drawn into the turmoil. A small crowd had gathered near the parking lot, their faces twisted in confusion and fear. The sheriff's deputy was standing over a man on the ground, hands cuffed behind his back. "Get back!" The deputy barked, but his eyes were aggressive, creating tension in the air. "What is going on?" Linda demanded, her voice rising above the crowd's murmur. Murphy felt a rush of dread, remembering last year's incidents, the community's voices silenced. But what happened next cut deeper. A woman rushed towards them, yelling, "That's my husband. What are you doing?" The crowd gasped as they realized who she was. The captain's wife, caught in the storm. Murphy's heart raced. This was the moment they had dreaded, the very scenario that could escalate the situation. The embodiment of their fears and hopes now collided as tension spiked, voices rising like wildfire in the dark. Would this end in chaos, or could it forge a new path for healing? As he looked at Linda, he saw the what now. In her eyes, a desperation that mirrored his own. It wasn't just about the cookout anymore. Everything suddenly felt much bigger. What will happen next if we don't intervene? He whispered, even as he felt the weight of uncertainty grow heavier. A storm was brewing, and this time it wasn't just on the horizon, it was right here, in front of them all. The air thickened with tension as more people gathered, drawn by the shouting and the sight of flashing lights. Murphy felt a knot tie tighter in his stomach. The fear of the past repeating itself loomed over him like heavy clouds. It was just like last year, a time when conversations turned into chaos and trust shattered like glass, a moment that lingered long after the dust had settled. "Stay close," he urged Linda and Dan as he stepped further into the crowd. He felt compelled to do something, anything, but dread clung to him like a wet blanket. What was he really going to do? The deputy stood strong, a wall of authority, but the woman was a force all her own, fighting against unseen chains pulling their entire community back into darkness. "Stop. Please, just release him," she cried again, her voice cracking under the weight of fear and desperation. Murphy could see the boy from earlier in the crowd now, his laughter replaced with confusion. Kids didn't understand these moments, they shouldn't have to. It wasn't fair. A man near Murphy stepped forward, his face alight with anger. "He hasn't done anything wrong. Just let him go." The words broke the soft murmurs of the crowd, igniting a bigger response. Others echoed the sentiment, each voice weaving a tapestry of solidarity against the control of the deputy. Murphy felt the heat rise, the ember of hope sparked in his chest. Voices were rising like flames, persistent and fierce. This was what they had been missing, people standing together even when it was hard. "Maybe we should approach," Dan said tentatively, eyes darting between Murphy and the escalating scene. "But how? We can't just walk up and demand she let him go." Murphy had no easy answers. But as he looked back at Linda, her eyes wide and uncertain, he also caught a glimpse of something more, something worth fighting for. "We can't just stand here. We have to let them know we'll stand by her," he stated, more decisively than he felt. He stepped forward, heart racing like a drumbeat in his ears. "Hey!" he shouted, voice breaking through the crowd's murmur. "You're not alone." When the captain's wife turned to him, he saw the tear streaks on her cheeks and the panic in her wide eyes. It made him push forward despite the pulse of fear drumming in his throat. "Murphy!" Linda called after him, alarm punctuating her tone. But he was already moving. He reached her quickly, instinct taking over. "We're with you," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "We want to let this happen." The crowd shifted, and he could feel eyes turning towards him, but voices were still screaming to the deputy. He had shifted the intention, but was it enough? The deputy glanced around nervously at the growing crowd, uncertainty creeping into his demeanor. "An opportunity. Let him go." Another voice rang out, loud and fierce. The message echoed, bouncing from one person to the next until it rippled through the crowd like water rushing over rocks. Pain radiated from the captain's wife, but then hope mingled with fury. "You don't have to live under this fear," she yelled, her voice strong against the storm of chaos. Murphy felt the energy inside him swell in response. It wasn't just a confrontation, it was a culmination of everything they had been building towards. A community ready to stand up, but just as fear and courage collided, the deputy's phone buzzed loudly. A command moment interrupted. He turned to answer, and sources collided once more. What now? Murphy wondered, sensing the tension shift again. Was it about to explode, or could it finally start a conversation worth having? The deputy stood still, his expression unreadable. And before Murphy could understand fully what would happen next, he heard a new voice rise from within the crowd, a furious challenge that would set the stage for what could come next. Enough! Why don't you tell us what's really going on here? A wave of electric anticipation surged through the crowd at the unexpected challenge. Had they finally reached a tipping point? Murphy felt his breath catch in his chest as he scanned the faces around him. Uncertainty danced in their eyes, but so did a flicker of defiance. The deputy turned slowly, annoyance etched over his features. He focused on the woman who had spoken up, a stranger to him, yet she radiated strength that could pierce through the tough exterior of authority. What do you mean? It's a lawful detainment, he shot back, but his voice lacked conviction, as if he questioned his own justification. Lawful? Or just convenient? The woman stepped forward, a fiery spirit in her stride. Her voice rang louder, cutting through the sea of uncertainty. You're hiding behind a badge while you break trust and community. The captain's family is not subject to your whims. Murphy felt a thrill at her words. They were sharp and unyielding, challenging the very foundation of the officer's authority. The crowd swelled around them, energy pulsating like a heartbeat. He sensed their hope shifting, gathering momentum. The deputy's face flushed with anger, but the murmurs from the crowd turned into a unified chorus of support. Tell us the truth, someone shouted in the back, and the phrase echoed, gathering steam, a mantra resonating through the throng. With every repetition, the deputy's posture stiffened as if the weight of the moment was crushing him. Go back to your posts, he barked, attempting to regain control, but it was too late. The power had shifted, and the atmosphere was charged with a collective defiance. Your posts? You mean the posts that separate us? You think those badges make you our masters? Bellowed another voice, this one unmistakably familiar to Murphy. It belonged to the high school principal, the one who had advocated for what felt like the entire community last year. This isn't the first time you've used fear to keep people in line. But we're done being scared. Murphy's heart raced. This was the explosion they had been waiting for, not violence, but a fierce awakening, a determination to stand united against oppression. The captain's wife caught Murphy's eye, and despite her tears, he saw something fierce. Her lips curled into a slight smile, imbued with the strength of everyone around her. It was as if she were solidifying the resolve to move forward, and he wanted to reach out and tell her they had her back. But just then, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Linda stood close, her grip both reassuring and firm. We can't let them drown her out. We've got to stay focused. Just as Murphy turned to respond, the deputy's phone buzzed again, but this time he ignored it. His attention was fully on the crowd, and every second stretched in palpable tension. Talk, the brave woman demanded, raising her chin defiantly. Explain why you're really holding him. We're not backing down. Murphy could feel the collective breath held tight. It was either the unraveling of trust that threatened to expose injustices or the disbanding of a united congregation. As the deputy glared back, something in his eyes flickered dangerously. Murphy couldn't shake the feeling that what happened next would change everything. In that moment, a siren wailed in the distance, echoing ominously as the murmurs of the crowd grew. Everyone turned, caught between hope and fear. Would help arrive, or was it confirmation of the escalation to come? The sirens grew louder, weaving through the tension that gripped the crowd like a vice. Murphy's heart raced, adrenaline mixed with fear. What would happen next could alter the very fabric of Breezy Hollow. He turned to the crowd, seeing determination gleaming in the eyes of neighbors who had once avoided discussions like this. They were standing up together, the deputy's grip on the man in cuffs faltered as the community's presence overwhelmed him. You don't need to act like this, he snapped, shaking his head, frustration spilling over. But his voice was faltering, losing its power against the tide of unity gathering behind Mrs. Johnson. Why is he being detained? Mrs. Johnson pressed, stepping closer, her voice steady, unwavering. Our community deserves transparency. What threat does he pose? The crowd murmured in agreement, anticipation hanging thick in the air like a heavy mist. In that whirl of fear and urgency, it felt like the entire town itself was held breathless. Memories of past injustices rose to the surface, demanding acknowledgement. The hesitation in the deputy's stance showed more than mere annoyance, it showed uncertainty. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared, the red and blue lights illuminating Captain Johnson as he drove up with urgency. A wave of relief washed over the crowd as he stepped out, his face a mix of concern and purpose. Everyone! He called out, his authoritative tone slicing through the chaos. Let us not allow this to escalate into something destructive. We can talk, we can sort this out together. His eyes found the deputy, locking in an unyielding stare. What's happening here? The tension oscillated in the air, the electric resolve of the town palpable. Murphy could feel a shift, with every heartbeat, courage surged within him. This man hasn't done anything wrong. Mrs. Johnson shouted, her voice rising above the murmurs. He is a part of our community, and he deserves to be treated with respect, not as a criminal. Others rallied behind her, voices rising in a powerful chorus of agreement. Let him go. This isn't just about one person, this is about all of us. As the crowd began to chant, an overwhelming sense of hope surged through Murphy. Perhaps this could be their moment, a breakthrough toward healing the rifts that had long divided them. Captain Johnson nodded slowly, understanding that the tide had turned. This was a collective voice demanding change. We need to listen to one another, he said, addressing the crowd with intensity. And I want to hear what's happening here today. It's time we hold ourselves accountable, including our officers. The deputy shifted nervously, and the storm around him began to settle. It was a small opening, a spark that could lead to a path forward. Captain Johnson took a step closer, his sharp eyes focused on his deputy. What are you going to do about this? The deputy stammered, caught off guard, realizing the crumbling perception of authority he had held moments before. How many chances had he missed to hear the community he vowed to protect? As the deputy hesitated, Mrs. Johnson stood by, determination etched in her features. We need change. We want to work with you, not against you. But first, we need to know you're with us in this. Murphy felt the collective weight of their voices encouraging him, emboldening him to add. We're here so that change isn't just a dream, but a reality. We need more than just apologies, we need actions, accountability, and a shared commitment to do better. With the eyes of Breezy Hollow upon him, the deputy sighed deeply, the tension cracking like a broken dam. You're right, he said, surrendering. I don't want to create fear. I want to protect and serve. A wave of uncertainty flickered through the crowd. Doubts about going back to normal lingered like ink bleeding into paper. But Captain Johnson's voice carried resolutely. Then let us begin with these conversations, with meetings where we can all share our stories. He motioned towards the growing crowd who had stood up, their faces radiant with cautious relief. If the police are to rebuild trust, if we are to rebuild Breezy Hollow, we need to hear from everyone, and truly listen. Murphy caught Mrs. Johnson's eye, and for the first time that night, he saw hope, genuine, unfiltered hope. The crowd erupted in applause, but as cheers echoed through the night, a beautiful tapestry was woven through the air. This was just the beginning. Their shared resolve could pave the way to a union they had long sought, a world where kindness overcame fear. As the sirens faded into the distance, Breezy Hollow felt different. It pulsed with possibility. With unity, every voice mattered, and as the night deepened, they stood together, no longer victims of circumstance or stifling fear, but as a community ready to fight for their future. Remember, this is our moment, Breezy Hollow. Let's keep the momentum going and share our stories. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment below your reactions and feelings about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.